Greetings to all of you. I would like to share today about a deep dive that I've been doing in my own personal process and reflections on this profound time of transition and transformation that we're all in right now. I think we're all feeling the turbulence of this time on the planet. And it's hard to understand all of what's going on or what's unfolding or what we can expect. And it's a time of uncertainty. It's a time of mystery. It's a time of turbulent transition on all levels. And I've been exploring more and more my own process with this, particularly as I've been the last few months in a process of revising my first book, Finding Our Center, Wisdom from the Stars and Planets in Times of Change, which is all about the processional cycle and what it means that we're moving out of the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. We're at the end of one 24,000-year processional cycle, the beginning of a new one. I want to express my gratitude to Barbara Hand-Clow, who's really supported me in revising and getting this book republished through Bear and Company. And it's really propelled me into doing more research, more exploration, more soul searching about this time that we're in. And I'd love to share with you some of what I've been reflecting on as I've been in that journey and exploration, and how it relates to the recent interview that I did with Barbara Hand-Clow about her book, Alchemy of the Nine Dimensions, and an interview that I did yesterday that I'll be posting in a few days, an interview that I did with Bibhu Dev Misra about his book, Yuga Shift, and his profound research and sense that we are moving out of the Kali Yuga, this period of about 5,000 years that we've been in, that has been a time of darkness, a time of chaos, a time when we as humanity are in our darkest time in terms of our consciousness, in terms of our separation from source, division with each other, destruction of the earth. We're coming out of that period. We're coming out of the period of patriarchy. We're coming out of this time of disconnection and destruction. And many of us are feeling how we're already in that transition and in this time of accelerated consciousness and accelerated change. But many of us also feel almost as if there are two timelines or two trajectories or two worlds that are playing out simultaneously on the planet right now. And that can be very confusing and hard to understand. And this is some of what I've been meditating on and reflecting on and really struggling to understand for myself. And I want to share some thoughts about that. And part of, I think, what many of us are feeling is that those of us that are on this path of awakening, healing, transforming, are feeling this increasing sense of expansion, spiritual consciousness really expanding, and our awareness growing. At the same time, we are seeing on the earth plane increasing violence, reactivity, division, polarization, greed, corruption, lies. We're seeing the darkest of the dark of humanity, and we're feeling this movement into the light. So how do we understand this polarization and this discrepancy of what's playing out on the planet? I think it is very helpful to understand the context of the processional cycle and the understanding of the Yuga cycle. Part of what Bibhu talks about in his book and in our interview is that this understanding of the world ages, of this movement through this 24,000 year cycle, is part of every ancient wisdom tradition. It is something that these ancient cultures were aware of and were tracking. And there is this consistent understanding that we move through this cycle in a 12,000 years of descending consciousness and a 12,000 years of ascending consciousness. The Greeks called this the Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age. In the Yuga cycle, it's the Satya Yuga, the Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and the Kali Yuga. But the consistent understanding is that we go through this period that is the Golden Age, and it is a time of ascended consciousness, of our capacity to be really functioning from our soul selves. And the scientific evidence is increasingly showing that it's a time where there's very little disease, very little famine, no war. We live in balance and harmony with each other and all that is. There is a very long lifespan. And then as we move through the descending cycle, and Bibhu will talk about this in depth, we change on all levels. Our physical bodies change. We see increasing disease. We see increasing a sense of disorder. We see that we move from this high level of spiritual consciousness into this decreasing consciousness until we come to this lowest part of the processional cycle or Yuga cycle that we've been in this last 5,000 to 6,000 years. And it is the time where we become most disconnected from source. We become most divided from each other. It's an increased time of war, of conflict, of greed, of power over dynamics, of disconnection from source and disharmony in how we're interacting with each other and the life forms around us, and destruction of the earth. We have seen that playing out on the planet. And as we're in this transition time, it is a time of our being at a critical choice point as humanity. All of the ancient prophecies, and I think this is profound, that we see the ancient cultures who were very aware of this cycle and this shift in consciousness from the descending cycle to the ascending cycle. And we're in that ascending cycle now. And the ancient cultures were very aware of this process. And as I've talked about in previous videos, I believe the ancient Egyptians encoded in the Great Pyramid, in the Sphinx, the ancient culture that built Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, cultures around the world encoded in stone information about this processional cycle for us in this time, because they knew we would go into this time of forgetting and disconnection from this larger awareness of this profound process of evolution that we're in as humanity on the planet. And they were wanting to remind us, to help us awaken, to help us remember who we are, why we're here, what this whole process is about. Part of what's critical in understanding the processional cycle is to know that we have not been on a linear path as humanity of increasing evolution. That is just false. And the science attest to that. And again, I don't want to go through reviewing what Bibhu and I talked about, but he's done brilliant research on the science that validates this cycle that we go through with the yuga cycle, with the processional cycle of ascending and descending consciousness. But part of what's also important to know is that the science and these ancient wisdom traditions also talk about these critical times of transition that we go through in this processional cycle every 12,000 years. At the midpoint in the processional cycle and at the end of one and the beginning of a new processional cycle. That is where we are now. And it is a time where we go through the most profound shifts in our consciousness, but also the most profound earth changes. Why does this happen? What is this cycle that happens every 12,000 years? Bibhu and I have some different understanding of that, but I think what's important to know is that it is a time where we go through, I believe, not only these profound shifts, but this time of being in a critical choice point as humanity. I think part of this cycle of ascending and descending consciousness is related to the fact that I truly believe that we move through this processional cycle and different astrological ages because we're in a binary star system. And in this dance, in an orbit, figure 8 orbit, with our binary star, which I believe is Sirius. And I believe that as we move close to Sirius, we rise in consciousness. As we move further from our binary star, our consciousness lowers. I also think that it's very important to know that every 12,000 years, our solar system moves through this part of the galaxy known as the galactic current sheet. Some call this the photon belt, but it is the way in which our solar system is moving through this current sheet that is the horizontal division line between the north and south poles of our Milky Way galaxy. And this current sheet is a powerful area where we move through incredible electromagnetic energies. It's a layer of dust and gas and, I believe, plasma that activates our sun and our solar system. Rory Duff talks about this. If you want more information about this, Ben Davison, and I'll put that link below, has done phenomenal research on the science of this. He's a researcher that has published with NASA and has done deep exploration of what this means when we go through this galactic current sheet. It is a part of why we're experiencing the level of storms that we're experiencing on the planet right now. As we move through that galactic sheet, it is activating all the planets in our solar system. We're seeing increased storms on every planet in our solar system, including our own. But part of what happens also is it activates the sun. We see that we're already in a time where the magnetic field of the Earth is lower. The magnetic field of the sun is lessened. We're in a time where we're moving into the solar maximum. 2025 will be the time when we're going to experience more solar energies, solar flares. But the fact that we're also moving through this galactic sheet means the sun is getting activated. And these energies can lead to profound shifts in our sun that can activate changes on the earth. Part of what we're all feeling is these increasing solar energies, cosmic energies that are coming to us from the galactic center that are activating our pineal glands, that are, I believe, activating those dormant strands of our DNA. We feel our bodies changing. We feel our spiritual consciousness expanding. But these energies also will trigger reactivity and imbalance and increased aggression in those who have not done their healing work to move into higher consciousness. So that's a part of this polarization that we're feeling on the planet right now. As I talk about in a lot of my videos, we need to heal in order to move into higher consciousness. There is no spiritual bypass. We can't just override our trauma. We need to face and heal our trauma and those shadow aspects of ourselves in order to move into higher consciousness. And I do believe that this phase that we're in, with this transition that we're in and the transition that our solar system is activating the light of consciousness, revealing what's been in the shadows, helping us see what we need to heal and transform and clear in order to move into higher consciousness. This is a time of apocalypse. An apocalypse means the great revealing. It is a time where we're seeing more clearly. We're seeing more clearly this Kali Yuga phase that we've been in, where we've been so out of balance. We're seeing more clearly what's out of balance in our own lives. It's an incredible time to heal. And we're being supported in healing in a very accelerated manner right now, which I've talked about in earlier videos. But it is very important that we heal our trauma in order to move into this fifth dimensional higher consciousness. Part of what Barbara Hand Clow talked about so beautifully in our interview is that these 9 dimensions of consciousness that we're capable of are getting opened up in this time, and that we have that capacity to move into these higher states of consciousness. We've been in this time of the Kali Yuga, this time of forgetting, this time of darkness. We've been locked into the third dimensional reality. We have started to believe that our only realm of reality is this material plane and what we can see and touch. We've gotten caught up in scientific materialism. We've gotten more and more caught up in an idealization of technology and a disconnection from the deeper meaning of what it means to be human and what we're capable of with our consciousness. All of that is changing now. And part of what Barbara Hand Clow talks about is we go through the fourth dimension, which is really what we're embroiled in right now on the planet. The fourth dimension is that level of collective consciousness, of thought and feeling. And part of what Barbara says that is so powerful is that your strength in moving through the fourth dimension is to be aware of your feelings. Be careful not to get caught in your mind. Be careful not to get caught in the propaganda and the manipulation and the distortions that are going on our planet right now. We're bombarded by media, social media, propaganda, efforts to control our minds, to activate fear, to manipulate our consciousness. We need to pay attention to our feelings that guide us to do that healing work that we need to do so that we can move into higher consciousness. And Barbara talks about how that will help us see the trauma that we need to heal. Remember, if we don't heal our trauma, if we try to override it, then it actually controls us. As Joe Dispenza would say, 90% of our behavior is controlled by what's in our unconscious. So if we suppress our feelings, if we push into our unconscious those painful experiences or traumas from the past, what we resist persists. What we push into the unconscious ends up being what controls us. I know this as a psychologist. I know this because my area of specialty was trauma. I know this in my own life. I had my own patterns of emotional trauma in my childhood, and I worked on them. I was conscious of them. I thought I had managed them, and I found in my adult life, I reenacted them. I found myself in the same painful, emotionally abusive patterns that I had tried so hard to leave behind. And I realized I had not gotten to the root of that trauma to fully heal it and clear it. And as I did that, it finally liberated me. And I was able to move into much more positive, healthy patterns in relationship. That's true for each of us, that we need to face our trauma in order to heal it, in order to move into higher consciousness. As Barbara talks about in her book, Alchemies of the Ninth Dimension, when we move into the fifth dimension, we are moving into that dimension of opening our hearts. It's through our hearts that we connect to our soul's consciousness. It's through our hearts that we connect to the unified field of cosmic consciousness. When we open our hearts, as Barbara Hand-Clough so beautifully said in the interview that I did with her, when we open our hearts and move into that fifth dimension, that's the key to all of the higher dimensions. That is the process that we're in on the planet right now. And so many of us are feeling it. We're getting that glimpse, that experience of awakening to the unified field of love, of unity consciousness. We're awakening to that remembrance of living in harmony with each other, living in balance with the life around us, living in right relationship with all that is. All the ancient prophecies talk about how at this critical time, what will guide us through this transition and transformation is to reclaim our connection with our soul selves, to remember who we truly are as humans. We are spiritual selves having a human experience. We need to remember that we are a part of the oneness of cosmic consciousness, that we are being guided and supported by these energies that are operating already at these higher levels of consciousness. We live in a sentient universe. I truly believe that the planets, that the stars are conscious, that they are manifestations of cosmic consciousness, the love and wisdom of the cosmos. They are trying to guide us and support us in this time of transition. I believe that we have the support of the Pleiadians, of those from Sirius, higher conscious beings from throughout our galaxy that are supporting us on Earth in this transition time. We have a lot of support around us, and it is a critical choice point. It's a karmic choice point for us individually and collectively. But to open to that fifth dimensional higher consciousness, we have to heal. I believe we need to heal collectively also. Because a part of what's important for us to know is that these 12,000-year cycles that we go through, where we go through this critical time of change, critical choice point at these times in the processional cycle, are when we go through this galactic current sheet. And what has happened in the past, what happened 12,000 years ago, is that we went through what was called the Younger Dryas period, where suddenly the Earth went into an ice age. And we went through comet impact. I also think we went through a micronova of our sun that activated a pole shift. It meant shifts in our continents. It meant the Earth did this massive turn and pole shift, which led to tsunamis, floods, earthquakes, volcanic activity, a massive reset of the planet and of humanity. What was going on at that time? Are these random events? No. I believe everything has meaning. Everything has a purpose. And as Bibhu will describe, this crisis happened 12,000 years ago at the end of the Golden Age and the beginning of the Silver Age. This is when we experienced the fall of Atlantis. What happened? We went from this time of heightened consciousness, the Golden Age. We were beginning into that descending cycle. And I think towards the end of the Golden Age, some got caught in arrogance and ego and started using that advanced understanding and the advanced technologies of that time for their own power and their own efforts for control. I've been in conversation with people who remember past lives in that final phase of Atlantis and have described to me in detail their experience of that misuse of their knowledge and their understanding of energy and technology. So I do believe that the cosmos and cosmic consciousness said, time for a reset. Think how dangerous humanity would be if we used that capacity of our consciousness and higher understanding for harm, for power, for control. So I do believe that crisis 12,000 years ago was a cosmic reset for the Earth and for humanity. And it meant we started anew. And I do believe that the Great Pyramid, the Sphinx, Göbekli Tepe, some of these other ancient sites around the world were built in the age of Leo after that time of cataclysm to say, this is what these cycles are about. This is what these critical choice points are about. Wake up, remember, come back into connection and balance and harmony with the earth and sky and cosmic consciousness. We are there again now. And Barbara Hand Clow has written a brilliant book. It was originally called Catastrophobia. I wish it had kept its original title. It's now called Awakening the Planetary Mind. And one of the things that she stresses is that we carry in our cellular memory, we carry in our ancestral memories the awareness of that cataclysmic crisis, that collective trauma. And when we don't heal collective trauma, we, like what happens for us individually if we don't heal our trauma, we will tend to either reenact it or perpetrate it. In my experience as a clinical psychologist, it was so clear to me that when we don't work our trauma, we either tend to repeat those patterns. It's not that we want to keep re-victimizing ourselves. It's that we repeat the pattern out of this unconscious thought that if I can face it and rework it, I'll heal it, I'll change it this time. But instead, what we do is we keep attracting the same pattern that wounds us over and over again until we heal. The other way that people sometimes manage their trauma is they become the perpetrator. They then perpetuate and act out on someone else the very trauma that they experienced in an effort not to feel like the victim, but to now feel in control. I believe a lot of the collective trauma that we see playing out on the planet right now, a lot of the war, genocide, violence going on between ethnic groups, between nations, relates to ancestral and generational trauma that has not been healed. And it then plays out in this way in which we are either reenacting the trauma or now acting it out on someone else in an effort to clear that trauma from the past. Look at what's going on around the world right now. Look at what's going on in the Middle East between Ukraine and Russia, in Sudan, in Myanmar, in different places around the globe that are caught in violence and war and genocide and destruction. At the root of that is trauma, unresolved trauma. So we, as humanity, need to heal. And people like Thomas Hübl are really actively working to support that healing of collective trauma, of ancestral trauma, of trauma between nations. In the past, Desmond Tutu was active in that, and other spiritual leaders like Thich Nhat Hanh. Many are trying to support the healing at the collective level. And many of us are supporting healing at the individual level. But the critical issue is we have to heal our trauma or we reenact it. And part of what that means for us collectively is we carry these memories of these past traumas on the planet, these past cataclysmic times in these 12,000 year cycles. And we carry that terror. We're back there now. Why do you think we see so many films about Armageddon or about earth shifts and cataclysms? Why do you think we see governments building bunkers and very wealthy people building bunkers or spaceships to get off planet? Because there's a conscious awareness of the science about these recurring cataclysmic crises that are from comet impacts and solar micronovas, these pole shifts, massive changes on the planet that create a cataclysmic reset. The science talks about it. There are people that are conscious of it. It's also coming out unconsciously through the fears that we feel in the collective, through the increasing reactivity. A lot of what we're seeing in the collective right now is not only a reenactment of ancestral or collective trauma, but an acting out of fear about this time that we're in now. And when we have trauma, again, from my background as a psychologist, there are 4 primary ways that we cope with PTSD or trauma: fight, flight, freeze, and fawning. We cope with trauma through fight, becoming more aggressive, becoming more reactive, acting out, survival instinct. we're seeing increasing reactivity and aggression around the globe. Flight is another coping mechanism. Escapism. We're seeing increasing addictions to substances, to alcohol or drugs or work or sex or social media, anything to distract us, anything to numb us, anything to escape the fear or the trauma. Freeze is just going helpless and feeling powerless and overwhelmed and terrified. And fawning is not so much an acute response, but an ongoing response, which comes from this effort, if only I accommodate or please others or try to be good, try to do it right, try to follow the rules, then I'll be okay. But all of these are coping mechanisms that aren't healing and clearing the trauma. And again, I think part of what we're seeing on the planet right now is a lot of fear, a lot of reactivity, a lot of trauma and trauma coping mechanisms, because we're in this light and energy from the sun and from the galactic center saying, wake up, see what's been hidden. It is all being revealed. The shadow aspects of ourselves, the unresolved trauma is all coming into the light of consciousness to heal, to clear, so that we can transform, so that we can move into higher consciousness. One other facet of healing that's critical as we're in this process is the wisdom that we have from the ancient mystery schools around the globe, the guidance that we got through Christ and other spiritual teachers. We need to let go of our fear of death, to remember that we are infinite soul selves having a human experience. We are not caught in this third dimensional reality. We are here in this third dimensional reality, in this time, to grow and evolve and to be in this process of healing and transformation. And I feel like many of us are on the planet in this time to support others in this transition time. But remember, this is a holographic reality. We are here to be in this cauldron of transformation, to be on this accelerated path of transformation, to move into higher and higher states of healing and consciousness. So we need to move beyond our fear and see the deeper meaning of this journey that we're on and how to reclaim our alignment with our soul selves, to be in alignment with our path and purpose, to be moving beyond fear and coming from a place of love and stillness and alignment with the consciousness of the cosmos. So understand the turbulence that we're in right now, and that we're seeing those who are on an accelerated path of healing and moving into higher states of consciousness. And we're also seeing the extremes of fear, reactivity, unresolved trauma, and the way in which that's getting acted out on the planet. So it's as if there are two trajectories. It's as if there are two parallel worlds going on right now. And I believe, and I do believe, that the ancient prophecies speak to this. And when I was working with the Caro, the Peruvian shamans, they and other indigenous people would talk about, if we wake up, if we heal and clear our trauma and move back into balance and harmony, move back in to alignment with our soul selves and connection with cosmic consciousness, we don't go through that cataclysmic reset. But if we don't, if not enough of us move into that higher state of consciousness, then we go through that time of reset for the earth to heal and for us as humanity to truly heal and reset. I believe, and the ancient prophecies and indigenous people who've held their connection to that ancient wisdom all speak to how those who are on a spiritual path will be protected. And my intuitive sense is that if we don't have enough of us moving into that higher consciousness to support the collective consciousness in healing and transforming, then I believe there will be a dimensional divide. And that those of us that are moving into that fifth dimension will move into a fifth dimensional new earth with the planet as she heals and ascends. And then those who choose, and we each have the free choice at this karmic choice point to heal and transform or to stay locked into our fear, reactivity, division, disconnection, greed, trauma. And those who choose not to heal and not to change will go through that karmic, cataclysmic reset in the third dimensional reality on the planet. But those of us who choose a path of spiritual consciousness will be in a process of ascension, which I believe means, and I truly believe, and I know many people now, many psychics are talking about these energies that we're going to experience from the sun. These, and I believe, again, it will be a major solar flare or a very a micronova that will not activate a pole shift or that cataclysmic reset, but will activate a shift in our consciousness, will take those of us who are on that path of healing and transformation into a heightened state of consciousness and into that transition into being homo luminous ones, beings of light. And remember, as we move into these higher dimensional levels of consciousness that Barbara talks so beautifully about, we are able to move outside of the bounds of space and time. The higher beings in our galaxy aren't moving through the galaxy through highly developed mechanical technology. They move with their consciousness. In the golden age, we knew how to work with sound, frequency, light, consciousness to move beyond the constraints of third dimensional time and space. This is what we're capable of as we reopen those higher dimensions of consciousness. So I truly believe whatever happens on the third dimensional earth plane, based on the choices that we as humanity make, those of us on a spiritual path will not experience that. Now, some, and I do believe this happened 12,000 years ago, some advanced souls will choose to stay in the third dimensional reality, if that is what we go through with a cataclysmic reset, in order to see that higher consciousness and to be there to help the humans and life forms move through that transition into a rebirth. But I do believe there is so much evidence in our history of cultures who seem to just disappear. the Mayans, the Tuatha De Danann in ancient Ireland, these cultures that I think went into another dimensional state. Keone talks about this with the ancient Lemuria, the people of Mu, who just went into another dimension because things were getting, the level of consciousness here on the earth was dropping to such a low frequency that they could no longer remain here. I think other cultures have done that in the past. I believe that is what will happen if our collective consciousness doesn't shift so that we can together move into a new dimensional reality and a new earth together. So this is a karmic choice point. We can't control what happens in the collective. We can influence it. We are co-creators with the energies of the earth and the cosmos. Those of us who are on this path of higher consciousness, as we come to center, and this is part of why I put out the medicine wheel practice, I think that's a profound practice to help us come to center, to honor all that we feel, to be in that healing process, and to come into alignment with our soul self, into alignment with the center of the earth and sky, so that we can emanate that energy of love and peace and healing into the collective consciousness. Many of us in this time are active healers, and I think those healing centaurs in the sky, especially Chiron, is so symbolic of what it means to be an active healer in the world in this time. And I think Cheroklo represents that way in which we can also be a profound healing presence on the planet through holding sacred space and emanating that energy of love and compassion into the collective consciousness. We are being guided to awaken, heal, transform, and move into higher consciousness. What's unfolding around us is trying to support us all in waking up and healing and transforming. The earth and sky are guiding us. I do not believe astrology or the transits are predictive or deterministic. They're guides. They are trying to support us in our evolution of consciousness. They're trying to remind us of our connection with the oneness of all that is. They're actively trying to support us in this time. And the ancient prophecies talk about the messengers from the divine, the messengers from cosmic consciousness, trying to alert us, trying to call our attention to this incredible time of transition that we're in. Barbara and I talked about the crop circles as messages from higher beings coming onto our earth plane to wake us up and give us these messages to guide us. I truly believe this recent comet, Tsuchin-Chen, the A3 comet that was in the sky, was saying, wake up, wake up. This is the trajectory that you are on if you don't heal, if you don't transform. This is what can unfold, what these ancient prophecies have predicted, but you have a choice. This is a critical karmic choice point. I think it's incredible that that comet was visible for a time in the southern hemisphere and then for a time in the northern hemisphere, and that it was moving in the sky in the stars of Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus is that constellation of the great healer. Ophiuchus is the serpent bearer holding the serpent and is so symbolic of the integration of the sacred masculine, the sacred feminine, what it means to come into our wholeness to heal and move into higher consciousness. Ophiuchus is the constellation that is standing above the galactic center, saying, heal, come back into connection with Source. Ophiuchus is the constellation that's opposite in the sky to Orion. And I truly believe that Orion is the constellation that is symbolic of our journey through the processional cycle, our journey as humanity in this growth and evolution of our consciousness. Orion is associated with Osiris in that ancient Egyptian story of Isis and Osiris. Remember that Isis is associated with the star Sirius, our binary star, and that whole story of Isis and Osiris is about how in the processional cycle we get caught in this conflict. Osiris gets attacked and caught in this time where Set is trying to kill him, trying to destroy him. The meaning of Set is getting caught in time and chaos, getting caught in this time of lower consciousness. And Isis, in her love, revives Osiris, heals him, brings him back into wholeness. Our binary star, the love and wisdom of the cosmos, continually are there for us as humanity to revive us, resurrect us, restore us. We may get caught in chaos. We may get bound in this cycle of time and get caught and mired in these lower levels of consciousness, such that we are on a path of destruction. And again, the earth and cosmic consciousness reset, restore us, launch us again. How we work with this transition is our choice. And what plays out in the collective will be determined by how many of us heal and move into higher consciousness. So in the midst of this turbulence, and many of us are feeling the turbulence on the planet right now, as we're moving into these higher states of consciousness, we're also feeling more of our psychic connections with each other. So I truly believe in this transition time, it's important to honor all that you feel. Don't suppress what you feel, but don't get mired in fear or reactivity. We feel the suffering going on around the globe. Feel the compassion. Feel your empathy for others. Feel your anger at the injustice or the violence or the destruction. Feel your sadness and grief. Allow yourself to feel what you feel, and then let it flow through you and come back to center. Because when we're in the center of the medicine wheel, when we're in that still point, then we can emanate that love and compassion that is sending out healing energy to others. As we move into 2025, the Kali Yuga ends, this age of ignorance and disconnection and destruction ends. Will the violence, will the turbulence end? I do believe we're seeing the last gasp of those who want to cling to those old paradigms, who want to control us, who want to focus that energy on the technologies that dehumanize us. Don't get mired in that, and do not believe that that is the trajectory that we're on, because those paradigms will end either through our all healing and transforming, or through this dimensional divide where those of us who are ascending move into that higher consciousness, and those who choose not to heal and transform will go through a collective reset. I believe that we are in an accelerated time of change right now as Pluto moves into Aquarius the end of November 2024. We move out of the Kali Yuga in March of 2025. In May through August of 2025, Neptune and Saturn will move into a close conjunction in the early degrees of Aries, and then they'll be exact at 0 degrees of Aries in February of 2026. I think it's significant that Neptune and Saturn are coming into conjunction in the sign of Aries in the tropical zodiac. And I believe that part of the meaning of that is it's time to release the shadow aspects of the age of Aries. That is when we moved into this darkest time of the Kali Yuga, this time of war, this time of a distortion of the Mars energy that's led to division and destruction. And Keone Hanalei and I will be doing an interview soon about the need to release these shadow aspects of the age of Aries so that we can heal and move into the Aquarian age that is about justice, compassion, collaboration, co-creating new worlds together, co-creating with the cosmos. I think it's significant that Saturn and Neptune go exact in their conjunction at 0 degrees of Aries in February of 2026. 0 degrees of Aries is seen in traditional astrology as this starting point for the zodiac, this marker of a new era. But interestingly enough, that is when our tropical zodiac got locked in time in the age of Aries, when Aries, the stars of Aries were rising before spring equinox at the spring solstice here in the Northern Hemisphere, marking the age of Aries. I think it's significant that Saturn and Neptune in the sky, when they go into that conjunction, will be in the stars of Pisces, supporting us in dissolving these out of balanced energies of the age of Aries, supporting us in opening Pisces to our spiritual expansion and remembrance of oneness, to dissolve our ego, our being dominated by ego consciousness, to restore our alignment with our soul consciousness. So 2025, 2026 are going to be an accelerated time of change. And I do believe that there is a critical point in 2032 when Uranus and Saturn go into an exact conjunction at 28 degrees of Gemini. And where this is in the sky, and this will happen in June of 2032, where they are in the sky at the time of that conjunction is in the upraised arm of Orion. Orion is the constellation that speaks to our journey and our evolution of consciousness as humanity. 12,000 years ago, Orion was at its lowest point in the sky, at its maximum declination, hovering above the horizon. It is now, 12,000 years later, at its highest point in the sky. And when that Saturn-Uranus conjunction happens in June of 2032, it is exactly in the upraised arm of Orion. Saturn-Uranus, movement into radically new forms, moving into new paradigms. The upraised arm of Orion, order coming out of chaos, a time of resurrection, of rebirth. I think if we are collectively on a path of healing and transformation and movement into higher consciousness, it will be a time when we will feel the new forms moving into manifestation, into integration on the earth plane, and our experience of a new world, a new earth. If we don't have enough of us to support that shift of the collective consciousness, I believe that's likely to be the point of the dimensional divide. And then, as you'll hear in my talk with Bibu, if those who choose to stay on a path that is not about healing and transformation go through a cataclysmic reset, that is likely to happen and get activated in 2036. So this is a critical choice point for us on the planet. It's important to not get caught in fear, but to understand the turbulence and the polarity that we're experiencing between those who are on a path of higher consciousness and those who seem to be actually getting caught more and more in the darkest of the aspects of what it means to be human and be caught in destruction, greed, violence, war, power over, lies, disconnection from source. So we're seeing those extremes, but we can be clear about which path we're on, which timeline and trajectory we choose. And we can support each other in that and do our best to support the collective in that by awakening, healing, transforming, and moving into higher consciousness. May we continue to support each other in that and be supporting the collective in being on a path of healing so that together we can all come back into balance, into harmony, into a remembrance of our interconnectedness with all that is, into a remembrance that we are supported by the love and wisdom of cosmic consciousness and by all of the sentient beings around us on the earth and in the sky, and by our galactic allies and friends and supporters. I will be sharing more about this in upcoming videos, but I wanted to give this overview as I've been in my deep journey and reflection on it all. And I do encourage you to watch that interview that I did with Barbara Hand-Clout about how we can activate these higher dimensions of consciousness. And I encourage you to listen to my talk with Bibu Dev Misra, because he shares in a profound way the ancient wisdom about this time. And he may have a different take on how that's all going to unfold, but I think what's critical is the wisdom that he brings from these ancient cultures and the incredible understanding that he has to offer about the prophecies about this time. It is a critical choice point. And may we each choose to be on that path of healing, to open our hearts, to come back into living from love and unity consciousness, to support our own healing and the healing of the earth and of all of life. Blessed be.